Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wolfpacker Show. My name's Ethan McDowell. I'm here with Noah Fleischman, and it's portal season, folks. The transfer portal is open, which means the past couple weeks have been complete chaos. Prospects have been on campus, prospects have committed, prospects have scheduled visits and then canceled them the next day. It, we're moving at an incredibly rapid pace right now. If you think things are going to slow down anytime soon, you are wrong because the portal is still open for 10 more days and it's going to be a very, very, very busy stretch of the year as NC State assembles its 2025 roster. It's not going to be as busy of a portal cycle as last year, where NC State brought in, like, I believe it was close to like 15 new guys in the portal last year. But there's still going to be quality additions out of the transfer portal this year, especially in the trenches. And they've already picked up a couple commitments. And we're going to talk about all of that. But before we do, as always, just want to plug the website. We're both writers for the Wolfpacker.com. That is NC State's site on the On3 network, the fastest growing college football, basketball, recruiting network out there. We have a great transfer portal database. You can go on there and see everyone who's entered the portal. We have them ranked on there, and you can see how NC State's portal commits stack up against the rest of the country. It's a really, really great tool. So I encourage you to go check out on3.com and especially thewolfpacker.com. Right now, it's only $1 to join, and you get 7 days for $1. You can get a taste of what we have to offer on our site. And if you like what you see, and I think you will, then you can continue for the rest of the year. And we'd really appreciate that. And we'd really appreciate if you go check us out at thewolfpacker.com. A lot of good stuff on there these days. It's, chaos season in the portal. We're getting prepped for, bowl coverage as well. And of course, basketball season is in full swing at this point. So constant content up on thewolfpacker.com. And we encourage you all to go check that out, please. All right, Noah, we're going to talk about the portal incoming transfers and the guys they've already have committed and future visits coming up. But before we do that, I think we have to start with retention because that's by far the storyline of this portal cycle. NC State, instead of bringing in a bunch of guys this year, kept the core together. They did an extremely good job keeping the important pieces of the 2024 team in Raleigh. Casey Concepcion is gone. He's transferring out of Raleigh. He's visited Alabama, Colorado, has trips planned to Texas A&M and Miami. So he's gone. But other than him, they returned pretty much every key piece of this roster that had eligibility left, Noah. And you have to tip your hat to NC State for keeping these guys around because they did a great job.
They did. I mean, this is obviously totally different than what they had a year ago. This time they had 25 guys leave the program a year ago. They're at less than half of that right now in the transfer portal. NC State was able to do an amazing job at retaining, keeping guys in Raleigh, guys that are, the ones that helped, win games this year, the ones that, are the future of the program. I think that's really important. And in the age of the transfer portal era, sometimes your biggest, portal victory is keeping somebody from going into the transfer portal. NC State did that really, really well, especially on the offensive side of the ball, maintaining basically every starter that had eligibility left on that side of football.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can go down the list. If you obviously the portal additions haven't been as star-studded as last year yet, but if I told you that you were bringing in players that had the prestige of a Justin Jolie, a Kendrick Raphael, a Jacarius Peak, a Hollywood Smothers, Noah Rogers, like you'd be thrilled that those guys were all sticking around, right? And that's what NC State did. They kept guys that would have had a lot of options. We'll just phrase it like that. There were SEC and Big Ten programs coming after NC State's roster. Like that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. The teams were trying to poach NC State stars, but the Pack was able to be competitive in the NIL space, as I think they've done a really good job of doing over the past couple of years. And they're just able to pitch a product and a culture. And I know I get on this podcast, Noah, and just kind of, scream about culture a lot on this show. But like, that's not just, me pumping sunshine here. Like, I really do think NC State has built a really positive culture that players have truly bought into, because after going 6-6, most teams would have a lot more roster turnover. But it was clear that people just wanted to be like in Raleigh, right? Like, it's clear that these players wanted to stay with the Pack, and the Pack was able to give them situations, whether that's NIL or pitching their future roles and stuff like that, to get them to stay, and that's huge. For me, the two biggest retention ones, obviously, it has to start with CJ Bailey. I I think if he had decided to leave after his great freshman year, he could have probably gone just about anywhere in the country. But like, I'll be honest, man, like, there was never really any worry about him leaving, because he's been all in really since he's got here. It seems like he really loves Raleigh, and he has really loved his time at NC State, and he is the ideal person to have as the future of the program. He was the first person that they announced that they were bringing back, and it was pretty cool to see just the ripple effect it had, because it's hard to understate the importance that bringing back your starting quarterback can have, especially because of the uncertainty NC State has dealt with at that position over the past few years.
For sure, it definitely did. He was obviously, probably one of the top guys on the priority list of get them back in Raleigh for
Number
another
one.
year.
Yeah.
And they were able to do that. He talked about it. Didn't really, money's not a factor to him. He's not worried about making money now, because he knows that he can get developed, make a lot more money in the NFL than he can playing in college football. And so he understands that. He's happy in Raleigh. He loves it. He said it from the first day he showed up on campus. This has been the place he enjoys being at. He joked, like, sometimes he doesn't even want to go home on break because he enjoys being here so much. So it's one of those things that's really important. It had ripple effects on the roster. It also had ripple effects through the collective. I mean, it's no doubt about it. I'll have a story up on the website today, but the collective saw a major increase in donorship after CJ Bailey was locked in for the 2025 season, which allowed them to keep going and get, a Hollywood Smothers, a Justin Jolie, a Jacarius Peak, all return for 2025, kind of creating this offense and keeping it together, which is important, especially with Robert and I being an offensive coordinator. This is a guy who really knows how to tailor his offense around a quarterback. But Ethan, through his first 2 years in Raleigh, he hasn't had quarterback stability.
Exactly.
Brennan Armstrong came in as the guy. There was we all know what happened there with MJ Morris, and then back then Brennan Armstrong. This year we thought it was Grayson McCall, and injuries just derailed his entire season. Now they have an opportunity to keep building on what they did through 8 stars with CJ Bailey. They have a whole offseason, and I think we won't see, it's a long way away. We're 8 months from this, but I think at this point we won't see as slow of a going on offense, just because they have an entire offseason to figure it out with guys that already have got game reps with. They know how to build a game plan around it, and I'm really excited to see what this can happen. And it all starts with keeping them in Raleigh, and NC State was really, really good at keeping players they need to stay in Raleigh.
And now it's going to be a make or break season for the offense, man. There's going to be no excuses. You bring back a ton of talent at the skill positions and at quarterback, and now you're going to invest a ton in the portal as well with offensive linemen, especially, and you bring back a couple really good players along the line as well. So this has to be the year where they kind of put it together, man. Every offseason, it feels like we talk about we're expecting the offense to make a leap. It has to make a leap this year. And we're going to talk plenty about that over the next 8 months or so. But for now, we'll just focus on, the personnel retention and attrition that they've got going there. But, man, you have no one leaving early for the NFL. You have one major contributor leaving in the transfer portal. That retention, I think, is going to look really smart in retrospect, and I think we're going to see that the fallout from that and the impact of that, just keeping a group together, a group that seems motivated to turn things around after this year. I think it's going to pay major dividends.
Yeah, it definitely will. And you losing Casey hurts, but in a way it doesn't. I mean, there's players they can make up for his loss, and they've got guys on the roster that can do that too. And we'll see. They'll preview that in the bowl game next week. just seeing how they ran the offense through him a lot, and it just wasn't as effective as it was his freshman year. So we'll see it. Kind of a preview, I guess, Ethan, on the adjustment that the offense can make post Kevin Concepcion, in the bowl game and then moving forward. But overall, yeah, keeping him in Raleigh's big. Defense also kept some key players in place too. This isn't just an offensive thing. The collective signed over 50 players. They've announced like 22 of them right now, but there's a ton of guys coming back to Raleigh.
Yeah. Again, I don't think we can say enough about the job Wolfpack and Savage Wolves did, and the NC State staff did as well to keep everyone around. This rate of player retention, especially after a 6-6 season, like that's what we have to. It's not like the vibes are amazingly high coming off of a 9-win year like last year. Like no, like this year was pretty rough for most of the season, but they have the retention of a 9-10 win squad. So that everyone involved in that process deserves a lot of credit. The players deserve a lot of credit for not just leaving when things got difficult. When you look back at that 2019 year where things were rough for the Wolfpack, there was a core group of guys, Devin Leary, Isaiah Moore, Drake Thomas, Peyton Wilson, that were there, Grant Gibson, that led NC State into the next era, that turned that program around. And are we looking at that sort of group right now with the group of young stars that decided to come back for 2025? Maybe. We'll see. But this is certainly a step in the right direction because I think there's a lot of talent on the team. Things just didn't work out this year. So I know people are going to be like, oh, you're bringing everyone back to a 6-6 team. No, I think with another year, there's going to be some good fallout from everything that we've seen so far this offseason. Do we want to talk about the two commitments that NC State's picked up so far? Because there's two interesting additions. They've picked up commitments from a pair of offensive linemen so far. Going into the portal, it sounded like they were going to bring in as many as 4 additions to the offensive line room. And they obviously needed to replace Zeke Carell at center. They needed to add a tackle or two to replace Anthony Belton. And, of course, Tim McKay's gone too. So you have to consider, are you content with rolling with the younger guys at guard? I mean, I think that's going to be what ends up happening, but we'll see. But they're going to bring in quite a few offensive linemen out of the portal this year, and they have already secured a pair of commitments from Utah State tackle Teague Anderson, and then also North Carolina A&T offensive lineman Brock Stukes. Both players visited in the last week. Both players committed shortly after their visits. Noah, I want you to talk about Teague Anderson. You were able to talk to him about his decision. He's a multi-year starter at Utah State, has played all over the offensive line, and we're anticipating that Jacarius Peak is going to move from right tackle to left tackle next year. And then T looks like he could be a plug-and-play right tackle, honestly.
He is. He's a guy that's athletic enough to play anywhere on the line, though, but he looks to be coming in at right tackle. The staff has penciled him in right now at right tackle. This is a guy that is athletic. He's strong. He's really good in pass protection, Ethan. He's got a 3% pressure rate in his first 2 years of playing college football. He comes in as a redshirt junior, 2 years of eligibility left. It's a good pickup for NC State. He was their first commit through the portal, and this is a guy that we talk about relationships being really big in the transfer portal era. Garrett Tujay was recruiting him at Virginia until he got hurt in high school, and it kind of just didn't work out. That relationship was big time in the portal. Garrett Tujay basically told him, I'm not letting you get away this time. And they secured his commitment. He's excited to be coming to Raleigh. And this is a guy that is a underrated piece, right? He's coming from Utah State, other side of the country, group of 5 level, but he's a proven player. He's played well against Power 5 competition. So I think this is a guy that can play on the offensive line for NC State and kind of, be similar to a Jacarius Peak and what he was able to do the past couple of years at State.
And other Power 4 schools clearly agree with you because before coming to NC State, he was at Penn State, Missouri, Kansas State. There were big time, Power 4 teams that wanted Teague Anderson on their team, but this was a tremendous recruitment by NC State. I'd say even three-fourths of the battle in the portal is just making sure the guy gets to campus. No, we've seen like 5 or 6 visits, probably more than that, honestly, at this point, get canceled before they even like make it to campus because that's how fast the portal moves. Once a guy gets on campus, that might be it for their recruitment. That like players aren't like, oh, I'm going to go take all 5 of my visits like prep recruiting. No, if a player gets on campus and they feel like they have the right fit, they're making that call. They're done. So I know NC State generally likes to take the approach of just having the last visit, and that's going to have positive effects where you're going to have guys like Teague Anderson commit. You're also going to lose guys that are going places earlier in the cycle and committing early. So, it's going to be a busy weekend. There's going to be a lot of guys on campus, but I thought Teague was an excellent first pickup for this class. And even if he is the only tackle addition of this cycle, I think you feel pretty good about rolling with Jacarius Peak and Teague Anderson for next year, and then seeing if any of the young guys can step up around them to play a role as well. But yeah, and Teague can play all over. I know Penn State was recruiting him as an interior guy. If he needs to play guard, he can play guard. He even started a game at center, I believe, at Utah State. So his versatility is really impressive. He could be someone that could play all 5 spots for NC State if they need him to.
Yeah, he can. He told me that he's really comfortable all over the line. He likes playing tackle. That's where they're going to put him. But, if injuries happen, or if they pull a Tim McKay and move him inside, it's fine. He's fine with playing the inside. So really big. And I think what's also big about the transfer portal is he's got 2 years of eligibility. This isn't a rental. This is a guy that can come in and play 2 years on this offensive line in Garrett Fugay's system, a system that he's wanted to play in, since he met Garrett Fugay in high school. He likes the way he coaches. He likes the way his offensive linemen play. And now he's got an opportunity to fit in, and he'll be here in January. And obviously, they're not guaranteeing anybody a starting spot on the offensive line, but this definitely looks like it's his spot to lose at this point coming in January.
No doubt about it. The other offensive line addition, he committed yesterday. His name is Brock Stukes from North Carolina A&T, originally from Chesapeake, Virginia, and Virginia powerhouse Oscar Smith High. An intriguing addition, someone that there was not much buzz about really until he committed, because he took a very low-key visit on Monday and committed. He had seen enough. That is all he needed to see. He's a 6'3", 317-pound interior offensive lineman. He played guard over the past couple years for A&T, and at NC State, he's going to play center. They brought him in as someone that's going to add competitive depth to that room. He was the starter for A&T's first 5 games of the season at left guard and then 1 game at center, and played a total of 344 snaps before getting hurt. But he was their full-time starter as a true sophomore. He played in I think 10, 12 games as a true freshman as well. So he's someone that was an early contributor at the FCS level, and he's a pretty dang good player too. He showed some impressive flashes at points. He is super physical. That is the thing that pops on tape. He has that edge that folks really that folks at the Murphy Center really look for, right? NC State wants offensive linemen that play nasty, and he certainly fits that mold. I really like what his highlight tape shows as a run blocker, and in pass protection, he graded out extremely well with PFF. In his first 5 games before he got hurt, he allowed 2 pressures against Wake Forest in the season opener. So that was his only game against FBS competition. But then in the next 4 games, he allowed 2 more pressures total, did give up a sack. But I think he's an interesting addition at center. He's athletic. That's what jumps out when you watch the tape. He moves laterally extremely well for someone at his size. I think he fits the center position well, even though he didn't play there a ton at his previous school. And he's someone that has 2 years of eligibility remaining and also a redshirt year. So he could be in Raleigh for up to 3 seasons potentially. And with the scholarship number expansion and folks that you can just take more players than you used to be able to, I think taking flyers on a few offensive linemen makes sense, because offensive line recruiting is the most crapshoot of any position group, right? You'll see 5 stars be complete busts, and you'll see unranked guys become superstars. And I think it makes sense to just take shots on evaluations that the staff feels good about. And Brock Stooks is one of those guys. Great kid. Got to talk to him on the phone yesterday, and he's psyched, fired up to be coming to Raleigh. And I think he's someone that maybe he won't contribute next year, but he could contribute down the road. And the next fall could maybe be in the 2 deep, be like a similar role to like what Dawson Jaramillo played this year, where he was a backup at multiple spots along the offensive line and played reserve snaps when they needed him to. I think I wouldn't pencil him in as a starting center. I think NC State's going to continue to recruit other options at center. But with that said, feel pretty good about them bringing in Brock Stooks. I think that was a smart addition, smart way to use one of those 4 spots. Even though he's a relatively unproven lineman, I think if he had played the full season without getting hurt and continued at the pace that he was on, he would have had a lot more offers than Marshall in North Texas and before he committed to NC State. So overall, feel pretty good about those 2 additions, man. So if you, Noah, were in the Murphy Center and you were looking at the roster, you're looking at the portal recruiting board, what would you really be prioritizing moving forward? There's going to be a lot of visitors on campus over the next few days. You can check out the list of that on the wolfpacker.com. But if you were in charge, what would you be really prioritizing over the next few days here?
You got to hammer the line, keep going with the offense and defensive line, but especially the center. I mean, we saw how impactful a transfer center, when you get the right one, can be on a team. NC State had that success this year with Zeke Correll coming in and being one of the best transfers that they got, period, just based on production that he put on the field. Did not allow a sack this season, allowed very few pressures, and was a really good leader. I think that's what NC State needs to find again to replace him. We're really excited about, freshman, Spike Solos coming in at center, but I don't think, this is probably an opportunity for him to be ready to start every game. But if you find a 1-year rental, Ethan, and you kind of set it up, make it a bridge center, but we'll see what happens. But I think, keep hammering the offensive and defensive line, which seems to be the strategy right now. Because if you look around the team, everything else is pretty set. But the Lions just need some work.
Yeah, I'd say the only one other area that I think needs emphasis is linebacker. I think if you can bring in a contributor at linebacker, that'd be huge, especially when you lost a couple of backups from this season. I think if you could bring in just one guy who could be a difference maker in that group and push for a starting role, that would be great. They had a linebacker on campus yesterday. You check out thewolfpacker.com for more information on him. But they're trying. They've offered multiple guys, and they're going to try to bring in a playmaker for that group to go and push the returning group of, Caden Fordham, Sean Brown, Kamal Bonner, Calvin McBride, all of those guys. They're going to bring in competition this year for that group. It's a little difficult right now because you don't have a permanent linebackers coach in place. Isaiah Moore, the Wolfpack great, is coaching that group right now. And he's been recruiting for the Pack for a couple years now. He's been coaching all fall with that group. So I think that's going to be a pretty seamless transition as far as him taking over like portal recruiting and stuff. And also like the way that you got to look at it is there anyone better to talk about the experience of being a linebacker at NC State than Isaiah Moore? But there is still uncertainty because NC State doesn't have a defensive coordinator, like a permanent defensive coordinator right now. Freddie Autry-Lindsay is the interim, the Wolfpack's Nichols coach, but we don't have any clarity yet on who's going to be holding down that job permanently. My guess is when these linebackers come to campus, they're getting a little bit of insight into who that will be, but we won't know until it's public. I think they're still going to be able to bring in a contributor at linebacker, and I think they need to. I think they need to bring in someone to push that group. So that's where I would emphasize personally, in addition to, the offensive and defensive lines. I thought it's interesting that they've expressed interest in a few more edge guys on the defensive line, like not necessarily the 270-pound defensive ends that NC State's accustomed to playing. Is that a signal of a scheme change now that Tony Gibson's off to Marshall? Are we going to see maybe a 4-man front every now and then. I don't know. Maybe it's possible. We'll see. But I think bringing in a couple of edge guys, if they are trying to be more multiple or switch to a 4-man front, I think you need to bring in a couple pure edge guys. And that's what they're trying. They're interested in doing that. So we'll see what happens there. But like you said, Noah, keep emphasizing the lines, bring in a linebacker, and I think you're in pretty good shape there. And it's going to be a small transfer class, but it's going to be a transfer class where they are just plugging the few holes in this roster and then developing. That's what the last point I want to make before we get out of here. This is a developmental program, right? NC State isn't Ole Miss. They're not, the Jimbo Fisher, Texas A&M teams, right? They're not going to be bringing in 20 transfers every year and just plug and play stars. That's not how NC State has won over the past decade, man. Like that, they win by developing the guys that they get. And behind prep recruiting, which over the past couple of years has been solid, and then plugging in holes with the transfer portal like they're doing and like they've done over the past couple of years, that's where there's going to be success. They don't need to hit the portal super hard every single year, but it's incredibly useful when you need an offensive tackle to step up or you need a starting center. So they're going to plug those holes, and then it'll all be about developing. It's going to be about how the group that went 6-6 improves. We're going to have to see who steps up, how much they improve, and that's going to have way more bearing on next year's success, I think, than any transfer portal addition they bring in at this point. But any last thoughts on the transfer portal before we get out of here, man?
It's the Wild Wild West, Ethan. Everything moves fast. If you don't get a commitment while the guy's on campus, you might not get him. So I think that's what you have to learn. That's what we've seen in the transfer portal. If the guy doesn't commit soon after leaving NC State's campus, there's a chance he's not coming. And that's just the world that you live in the transfer portal. But NC State has been able to be on their toes, proactive. When one guy cancels, they've got another one lined up already at the same position. The recruiting staff and the player personnel staff has done a great job at identifying talent and kind of figuring out a game plan. All right, here's priority 1, but if he says no, here's priority 2, and kind of just lining it up and getting it ready to go. It's what you have to be successful in the portal. And NC State's found success the past few years in the portal, and we'll see if they can do it again with a smaller class this time. We're not going to see the 15 portal commits that we saw last year, but 5 or 6 might do.
Absolutely, man. All right, well, I'm going to plug it one more time, man. It's going to be a busy next few days in the transfer portal, and we're going to have all of the info up on the wolfpacker.com. We're going to have a scoop coming. I heard some stuff during this podcast that I need to go write up. So there's going to be scoops up on the wolfpacker.com shortly. Stay tuned, and we will talk to you all very, very soon. And go subscribe to the wolfpacker.com. See you all next week.